Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Boss did not pay me extra salary, and I wrote down every step I took and gave it to the boss. The second story. A-hole manager took my phone away, which had pictures of the document, prevented me from doing my job. The third story. Owner made us pay for the spoiled lawn, but we sued and won. The first story is W Day. After ceaseless attempts, I finally got accepted by a large fast food chain with an expertise in breakfast food. As to be expected, I was aware upon being hired that this is where dreams came to die. There was no creme de la crop employees here, and there was lots of shady stuff going on. In fact, the entirety of the reason I got hired was because this place had been robbed several weeks before, and turns out half the employees were involved in said robbery, so they were a little understaffed. I started off working part-time, as I was still in school, so I only put in 12 to 15 hours a week for the first 6 months. For the next 5 years and 4 months I was technically full-time, but I wasn't, but I'll get to that. Let's begin at my final week of work. My manager was overall a nice guy. He liked me because I actually put effort into my work and was always available to be called in. Since he knew I was going on a 1-week vacation, he worked me 117 hours the 2 weeks beforehand. I show back up after my vacation to a boss that's so happy to have his prized worker back, and he hands me a 67-hour work week to make up for the week I was gone. I worked 14 hours that first day I was back, and was also given my check for the previous week. The problem is, we were paid weekly. I was out of state all last week, and my boss just handed me a check for working 40 hours for a week I wasn't in the store. By check, I mean cash. We were always paid in cash because we're shady. I got home and immediately called my manager to ask why I was given a check for a week I did not work, and he says, and I quote, "Don't worry about it. If anyone from corporate calls you, just tell them what they need to hear." This was his catchphrase for "I'm doing illegal SH. Don't rat me out or I'll throw you under the bus." Now, my boss had done plenty of shady SH like this to me since I'd been employed here, but this was just carelessness that was painfully obvious. He was banking on me taking the cash, and if I got called by corporate, making stuff up when he would have thrown me under the bus and got me fired, and worse, as he's done this before. I told him not to worry, that I would have everything under control, because I did. We didn't have time stubs or any type of sign-in sheet outside of the one wired into his computer, one he could freely manipulate at any time. Well, I didn't like that, so from day one, I kept personal track of when I clocked in, clocked out, what job I did, what the pay rate for said job was, and totaled my gross salary every night I got off work. I did that religiously every day for 5 years and 10 months. I also kept every paycheck, even the ones I had to fight him to give me. I always compared my times to his, kept track of all deductions, and left a star by every single one that was incorrect in some way, be it time tampered with, abnormal deductions, etc. Well, the next day, an hour before I'm scheduled to come in, corporate comes calling. They couldn't help but notice that I had accepted a check for 37 hours I didn't work from the previous week, and asked if they could send a representative to talk to me about it. They also informed me that this wasn't the only infraction against my profile, that they had me on watch for about 6 months. I gladly informed them that I was expecting their call, and would happily go over all occurrences with anyone they sent. I was informed to show up for work, that I would get paid to sit down and talk to this person while I went over the occurrences on file. Lucky me, I had every occurrence that had ever happened in my own personal files that I made copies of with explanations under each error as to why it had been made. So, I waltzed into my place of business at 6 a.m. and clock in to be greeted by the regional manager, my boss's boss, a man that I knew well and was so satisfied to see. Before he even sat at the table with me, I pulled out my briefcase with all my records and my paycheck from the week I wasn't in state. To say he was shocked was an understatement. My records pointed out even more mistakes than theirs. We went over every minute that was shaved off my time, every hour of overtime that was moved to a different week, every shift that I mysteriously covered, times when my food tax would spike, times when the insurance I didn't have was deducted, raises that were not honored, bonuses that I claimed, the whole 9 yards. About halfway through my records, my boss comes in, an hour and a half late, and sees his star employee going over records with his superior and instantly turns white and runs to his office. After 5 hours of discussions, we come to an understanding that after 5 years and 10 months of employment, rather than me owing the business $1,054.43, that the business owed me roughly $8,567.78. He asked me why I waited so long to contact him about it, and I replied that I was too scared for so many years, and was simply waiting for my boss to slip it up big time so that if anyone came asking, I could hammer the nails in the coffin. He bought me lunch and wished me a good day while he went to talk to my boss. As I was eating, I could hear my boss screaming that there was no way my records were true, that I must have made them all up, when his own system records couldn't even go back as far as mine or corporate records. When I got back home, I got called by one of my coworkers asking me what had happened. That about 15 minutes after I left the place was shut down for an investigation by corporate. All employees were let go from that location, and a select few were rehired after the investigation was over. I never got that money, but at that time in my life I didn't really need it, and just considered myself lucky to finally be free from it all after almost 6 years. The second story is, no work, no problem. I'm a freelance translator. Have lots of experience because I studied in the US for a few years, and even got a part-time translating job in an office for some times. Got hired on this job because my father knew the CEO of the company and vouched for my ability. She took the offer partly because my rate is lower than people working in an agency/company, and my experience level is even higher. My job in this case is to translate face-to-face and the necessary documents and statements from both sides. The representative, Bone, of the big company, wanted to sign a big construction contract with the CEO's company. She shall be less from now on. Problem is, the procedures and the methods are very intricate and hard to understand. So it took a few days for both parties to understand everything together. During that time, I got more acquainted with the staffs of Les's company. They were all chill and appreciated my professional attitude and mannerism. I do not use my phone or anything unrelated while working to prevent distraction, and I try to be cordial with everyone, all but except one manager. He shall be AWIPE, or AW, whom for some reason got pee about the whole deal of me being here. I did notice his glances, but I was pretty busy, so I just forget about it. Then one day when I head toward the break room, I heard him berating me for being pretentious, and obnoxious, and whatever else. I had very minimal contact with him, and my job sure did not cross paths with his or anything. He shut up when I walked by. In my head, I got a bit annoyed, but soon went back to work. Now, after a few days of smoothing out the contract details and policies, it was time for the real meeting, money. Everything we've done would mean nada if there's no fund to back it up. And this delightful procedure took much longer than the previous one. One day, both Bone and Les went to see a big bank together for negotiation. Les stated that I can stay back at the company and be ready to note and translate whatever document or even phone calls if needed. The bank apparently prepared a translator of their own. Essentially, it was a free pass to sit back and relax, but still getting paid. So I said okay, because why the heck not? I sat on a sofa in the lounge playing some solitaire on my phone for a while. Then suddenly I got messages from Les to translate the document and the pictures she sent. The document wasn't urgent or anything, but they'd be back soon and would like to go through the document together before dark. So I typed away on the phone before sending it to a worker to print out. Lo and behold, the AW manager came by and saw me typing on my phone. He slid over to me like it's his mom's DM or some SH and starts lecturing me on professionalism at work. Then the AW took my phone away and said I can get it back after work as a lesson. Few things, I'm not a subordinate and not a direct employee of the company. Therefore, their rules don't apply to me. That's my SH, and I hated it when people take my SH away. Most importantly, it's my SH. But I decided to just stay quiet and threw up my hands like, fine, I give up, you won. The AW got the grin on and commended me for being a bright kid. Bone and Les came back after half an hour, and Les was surprised that I did not have the document translated and ready yet. Asked me why, and I told her. The AW took my phone away to teach me professionalism. Suffice to say, she was not happy. So while she stormed off to AW, I entertained Bone for a while. Pretty chill guy outside of work. After a few minutes, Les came back with AW visibly shaken behind. He returned my phone and apologized for what he did. I just pretended to not express anything on my face, but secretly was hiding a massive grin. Went back to work, but it got dark, and work was postponed to the next day. Later on, I heard from other workers that Les gave AW a 20 minutes on what he did, and some of the formal complaints about him. Imagine your boss reams you for doing a bad job. Now imagine that the final boss is personally breathing down your neck on the same matter. I knew when he took my phone away, I could have said a number of things to stop him and continue my work. But me being an absolute C, sometimes, maybe, I decided to have some fun with him. I later explained it all to Bone, and he got a good laugh out of it. AW never gave me any SH from then on. He tried to stay as far away from me as possible. Job went on as normal and I collected my paycheck at the end. Few weeks after I left, he was demoted back down a few rungs, and his record was stained. Heard that one from Les herself. The last story is, Landlord tries to keep security deposit. No? About 10 years ago, my at-the-time girlfriend, now wife, and I moved from the area we went to college to an apartment near where we planned to start our careers. I say it was an apartment, but it was really the basement of a house that the landlord had walled off to create 2 apartments to rent. The place was kinda crappy, but the rent was cheap for the area and we were close to work. Everything was fine for a few months, but the only parking for us was on the street out front. The couple that rented the upstairs apartment had rights to the garage and driveway. They paid more than we did. Suddenly, my car got a couple of BS tickets for parking on the street. I'm guessing some A-clown cop needed to meet their quota, and my girlfriend's car got sideswiped in a hit and run. This crap had to stop, so we emailed the landlord, her preferred form of communication, to ask if there's anywhere safe for us to park. She replies, "Park anywhere you want." We had noticed that our upstairs neighbors usually eschewed the driveway to park in the front yard. They were horribly lazy, so we figured that would be a good spot for us too. We parked in the front yard the rest of the year. We figured that would be the end of it. We finished our lease, left the place in better shape than we found it, and requested our $1,500 security deposit back. After a couple of weeks, we got a check for $700. WTF? Since there was no explanation, we asked the landlord for one, and she replied that the deducted amount was to resod the lawn, claiming that parking on it had damaged it. Now, I was the one who cut the grass at this house while we stayed there, so I was well aware that the lawn was more weeds and bald spots than grass. Picture the African savanna in midsummer. No one had ever lifted a finger to landscape any part of the property, but the landlord wanted to sell the house once the leases were up, and she figured she could get the renters to pay for a nice new lawn. I complained to the landlord. Didn't care. I put in a complaint with the local housing department. Didn't care. I threatened to take her to court. Didn't care. So that's what I did. I took her to small claims court. I had never sued anyone before, so I was going in prepared. I took pictures of the entire front yard. The areas that we damaged was actually one of the best patches of grass, though it did have a small rut that my tires made when the yard was muddy in the summer. Most importantly, I printed out the email where the landlord told us to park anywhere. We were suing for $1,800 to cover court costs, and us both missing a day of work, on top of the full security deposit. In mediation, we said we would settle for $1,400, but she must have thought she was in the right, because she refused to offer a penny more than the original $700 check, which we never cashed. It was pretty clear that she had no evidence, hadn't prepared anything, and just assumed that us kids would fall on our faces. We did not. We put everything we had in front of the judge and made our claim. He was impressed. He stopped us when we showed him the email to ask the landlord, "Did you really tell them to park wherever they wanted?" When she said yes, the judge replied, "Then what are we even talking about?" And that was that. Judgment in full for us, and that bee had to pay to resod her own D-lawn. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.